Hi, I'm Monique Robbins, and welcome to my garage. I created my very own therapy pool made from scratch, and I wanted to share my experience with you. I needed this for medical reasons, and for the pools that were out there, I could not afford the really expensive ones, nor did they meet my needs. So I made my own, and I wanted to share my story. So let me show you the pool mechanics of how I set up my pool to work. So we'll call this flow 1. You have a circulation pump, that's what pulls the water in and out. You have a skimmer that's at the upper top part of the pool to grab the water from the top, including leaves and anything that's floating on the top. Then I have an inlet suction / drain that's at the bottom of the pool. I want both of these sources to bring water in, so they're going to be split 50-50. They're going to go through a chlorine filter, then the circulation pump, and then a heater, and then the return jet. You want to put the filter before the circulation pump so it catches any debris that the skimmer did not get. And I also want to mention that you could put a diverter valve right here to split the skimmer and the drain, but I tried that and it didn't quite work the way I wanted it to. So I ended up just putting closed valves at these two spots so I could open and close them, but they're usually open and they run 50-50 each. So I'm going to call this the jet flow. This is a separate cycle from the first one and all different fixtures. So I have an inlet suction / drain to pull the water into our second pump, which is a 2-speed pump, so I have a high and a low speed. And then it kicks it out to the jets. And I have the plumbing configured so it goes from one jet to the next. So I only have to plumb the spots in between. Now the jets that I purchased have a water line on the bottom and an air line on the top. And as you can see, I plumb the air line the same exact way where it goes from jet to jet to jet to jet. And then it goes to an air valve. And that air valve is accessible at the top of the pool so that you can open it and close it. And it adjusts how strong the bubbles are when the jets run. There is another configuration you can use when you're putting this together. Let me show you what that is. Between these two, now this is representing the same Jets 1 cycle. It's my first jet cycle of 4 different jets. This one has what's called manifolds in it. It has a water manifold and an air manifold. This is just, a manifold is just a PVC fixture, and in this case it's actually the same fixture. There's just 2 of them. One is carrying water and one is carrying air. This is typically used if you want to use flex tubing. And this is typically used for hard PVC. Now, I thought this way was cheaper, and in fact it is, and everyone kept saying, don't do the hard PVC, use the flex PVC. And it was like triple the price, and you need like 10 times as much of it because you need a lot more of it, because they all have to go back to the manifold instead of going from jet to jet to jet. So because of the cost and my experience with hard PVC, I had gone this route. Having done it and had our first leak, I would go this route in the future. And the reason is because you got to put the jets in first, and then you have to put the piping in after. And with the jets already anchored, it was almost impossible to get that hard PVC pipe in between the two. So we ended up having to split it in half and put half of it flex with a coupling in order to get it in there. So keep that in mind. So we've got our first flow, that's our circulation our main cycle, and then we've got our jets. You also want to keep in mind what other fixtures you're going to want to have, such as a light, maybe wireless access, and let's talk about the ozone. There's two ways you can do ozone. You can put it directly into the PVC itself, or you can have what's called a UV ozone. And ozone is just a way to kill the bad bacteria in your water that the chlorine doesn't account for. So this is just a small unit, another fixture, and this connects to your return jet, the airline of the return jet. They also make return jets that are specifically called ozone return jets, but the ones that I found were no bigger than 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch. So I used one of the ozone ones, and then I also used one of my regular jets, a 5th one, as a return jet. So you have to know how you're going to configure it, because when you do your main controller up here, you have to know what to order, and it's got to run all the fixtures that you want it to run. So the main controller that I got is actually attached to the heater. And what you do is you hire a professional electrician, and he wires a special outlet to your house. It's like a hot tub outlet. It's the same thing. And that wire runs to your main control panel. Then your main controller would say, yes, I want ozone. Yes, I want a circulation pump. Yes, I want a 2-speed pump. Yes, I want a light. And yes, I want a wireless access. So if you want to have all those things, you got to make sure your controller accounts for that. And then you have what's called a keypad that also connects to your main controller. And that is what you see on the top of your pool, that you can adjust the temperature, tell it how often you want the filter to run, etc. So you've got to know what features you want to run. I also want to talk about a blower. The blower is another feature that you can have on the airline. I chose not to have it for 2 reasons. Your circulation pumps will make noise when they run, and a blower will make additional noise. And the blower is a pump, so to speak, that can push air through the jets. I didn't use it because of the noise factor and because it is said to blow cold air out the jets, and I don't want cold air coming out of it. So it's not something you need, but it is something you can have, and if you're going to have it, you need to know, because your controller designates it as a blower. There's a lot of things that I learned going through this, like needing unions around all the main fixtures, close valves, and check valves, and a Hartford loop, but that's for another day. The first issue, logistics, is very important. We decided to put it in my garage, and I had a prior therapy pool, so I kind of knew what size I wanted it to be. We did it 6 feet by 7 feet, and it is 53 inches tall, and that is to allow for 48 inches of water. It's also wide and long enough so that I can swim with a tether belt around my waist and be sprawled out swimming without hitting anything. So size is important. I would also not have more than 3 people in it at a time. I'll usually only be the only person and might have 1 or 2 other people with me. If I was going to have more people, then it would need to be a bigger size, because it just won't allow for that many people. Size, location, ventilation is another major concern, especially since I'm putting it in a garage. So we crack the garage, we put a ceiling fan in, we run the ceiling fan when the jets are running. We also did some special things behind the walls. It's waterproof paneling and some vapor barriers behind that as well. So let's talk about the structure. We ended up just using plywood. I believe the 3/4 inch plywood. My husband is a carpenter, so he built it just like you would a house. He used some extra bolts and some enforcing frame work in it. because we had 90-degree angles, we also put styrofoam triangles in most of the corners. I read somewhere that if you have 90-degree angles, the water doesn't circulate as well in those spots, and it could create some chemical issues. So we went ahead and put the styrofoam triangles in the corners. Now, I originally planned it where we were going to have a vinyl liner. I didn't know of any other kind that we could do ourselves, so excuse me, we ran into some problems when it came time to ordering the vinyl. I don't know if you've noticed, but on the internet it advertises you can have your own custom liner made, so I didn't think it was going to be an issue. But my husband framed everything, and we built steps that can also be benches because the jets are going to go behind the steps. So because of those custom steps is where I ran into the problem. There were only 2 companies that would actually quote me a price. One was DLM Plastics and the other was Polyfabrics. Now, Polyfabrics quoted me $300, which is what I budgeted. However, they didn't ask for my requirements. They didn't ask for if the corner was going over the top. They didn't ask for any of the logistics, and it made me kind of nervous because when I spoke with DLM Plastics, the guy actually took my drawing and turned it into a 3D drawing that he verified all the measurements were right. So they were a pleasure to deal with. He also recommended what they call a scrim or a rip top embedded material, because he said the vinyl typically doesn't hold up in the hotter temperatures. That's why you don't typically see it in a hot tub. And he said the rip top has a pattern in the fabric. It's like a rubbery pattern, and it can expand with the heat. So it's supposed to have a longer durability. So he actually sent me samples in the mail and went ahead and did those 3D drawings. So after my husband framed it in and I contacted him to order it, it was $800 just for the regular vinyl, not even the ripstop. So I didn't like the cost of that, especially thinking that in 3 to 5 years I'd have to replace the vinyl if it even lasted that long. So I had found a YouTube channel from a company called fiberglassite.com, and they show you how to waterproof a plywood box. They supply pool materials to pool companies to do fiberglassing, and the guy on there, I believe his name was Michael, made it look so easy. So initially I didn't want to go that route because it was relatively expensive, but after the $800 price for the vinyl, the supplies for the fiberglassing through that company was going to be about $1,000 just for the materials. So we opted to go that route instead because we figured the fiberglass would hold up much better. And needless to say, we did not know how much work it was going to be. The pool's been up and running for 6 months now, and when we were fiberglassing it, it was April. I live in Michigan, we get snow. This was 2018 and the weather was cold for a very long time. Our spring was very delayed. And when you get the fiberglass products, you have to apply it in over 60 degrees of weather. So we ended up having to buy a portable heater, which wasn't part of the plan because I didn't want to wait 3 weeks to apply it. But it took several days, and the fiberglassite.com gives all the requirements of what needs to happen. I even contacted Michael with questions. I sent him pictures on some issues I thought I was having, and he was great with helping me. But my husband and my son and I all did it. It took about 5 days because you got to put a layer down, wait for it to dry, put another layer down, wait for it to dry. It was a lot of work. Totally worth it, but I don't think I could ever go through that again. So let's talk plumbing. You can pick any fixtures you want. You already know what I selected based on the mechanical drawing I did earlier for you on the whiteboard. So let's go ahead and look at the pool and actually look at the fixtures that I used inside the pool. So this is the wall with the skimmer, obviously, which would be my circulation pump flow. So there's the skimmer, obviously, and then down below, down here is my drain. Now I'm gonna come around to this wall. Okay, so this is the far wall. This has the most going on, and all of our pumps and everything are underneath the stairs. Make sure when you frame it, see how wide this one is? That's because when I put the filter in, it was a lot wider than I expected, so we had to make this a lot wider. So getting back to this wall, there are 1, 2, 3 jets that's on the jet cycle. And down here we have a light. I have it on so you can see. That's the drain for the spa cycle. And then there's actually 2 return jets over here. And I don't know if you can see it in there. I have to show it from a different angle, but there are 2 jets. There's one, that was an ozone jet, and there's another one somewhere over there. And then our custom steps that allow for seating. We also we just use PVC pipe for the railings. Again, it was just the cheap and easy way to do it. Now, I did not put any stuff on that wall because, as you can see, we can't get to that wall. And we can't really get to this wall, but I did put 1 jet over here to help with the water circulation, as well as it's a little lower. It's about like thigh height, so that I can use that for my legs when the jets are running. Just to show you a little bit of what's underneath, these all have locks and can be opened pretty easily. That was done on purpose. So there's our main, that's the heater and the control panel. The main control, the control panel, you can see plumbing is coming on both sides. There's unions that twist off, as well as close valves. So this is the main cycle. That pump down there is for the spa jets. And you can see there's insulation in it, and these pipes are for, that's actually the air valve right there. But it goes down back in there for the spa jets. And it also goes this way. Those are for the spa jets, and this is for the circulation pump. This is the water valve, and this is the air valve for the jets. Okay, now I'm coming on the other side of the pool. Again, we've got the same latches. They unlock. Now, there's a lot going on over here. You can't see all of it, but you can see our insulation. So here's the skimmer. We've got a 2-way close valve right there. It comes down, and back through here is our drain, which again has another 2-way valve, so if I wanted to close one I could. So the water comes in through those and then to the filter. And then the filter comes over. And you have to have access to the filter because you got to change it every couple weeks. And the filter then comes over to the circulation pump. And it then goes, the pipe is running right there over to the other side where we just were. All right, moving on. So we already talked a lot about the electrical. The only thing I forgot is on the control panel, or the main controller, I bought one that allows for wireless access. Not all controllers allow for that. So if that's a feature you want, then you gotta make sure you buy a control panel or a main controller that allows for wireless access. And so what it does is there's another wire that connects into it for the wireless access, and with the wireless information, some hardware also plugs into your local router, assuming you have one. So I think it was another $200 or $300 for the wireless piece. I planned on getting that down the road. Maybe I still do, I don't know, but it basically just allows you to change the heat, change the filters. You can access the hot tub remotely if you have that feature. So that was, I thought, a cool thing to get, but I still haven't gotten it. I also want to mention, even though my return jets are set up for the ozone feature, I still don't have the ozone feature, and I'm doing just fine without it, quite honestly. I would change the filters every one or 2 weeks, or if my water gets cloudy, I find if I just change the filters, all is well. I was using the test strips to test the water chemistry on hardness, pH values, chlorine, and something else, I can't remember what it is. But the strips weren't working, so I ended up spending like $75 to get a true testing kit for the water, and it's really helped me a lot. The chemicals are not expensive, but it does take time to keep everything in order. So I also want to mention, I live in Michigan, as I mentioned, so the pool's in my garage. We do get snow and freezing temperatures, so heating it to 95 degrees all the time, year-round. In the winter months, it costs about $150 on our electric bill. So if you're thinking, well, a gym membership is maybe $50 to $150 a month, depending on where you go, that may actually be cheaper for you than trying to build this yourself and have the electric bill. But the gyms were not doing it for me because they didn't have the right features that I needed. So chemicals we kind of talked about, ozone we talked about, insulation, decking, rail, fence. If the pool's outside, you'll need to account for getting permits and having a fence and a gate and all that stuff. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. Also, the cover. The cover was kind of fun. I initially just bought the cover behind me that has, it's the brown one. It is just a vinyl marine waterproof fabric that usually people use on boats to cover the seats. I just bought it at a local fabric store. It was relatively cheap, I think, got like 7 yards, and it was under $30. It was not a lot of money. However, when I put it on the pool, thinking that should be all I need, it did not do the job. What I mean by that is the pool took forever to heat. The moisture was all in the air. I could smell the chemicals. It wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. I did just sew some red straps on it and shove a PVC pipe through it to kind of hold it in place and allow me to open it. Also, my husband cut a PVC pipe in half so I could slide the fabric through it because we were trying to prevent it from falling in the pool. I also turned it upside down so that the brown side is facing the water, and that's because the water, it does evaporate even when it's shut, especially when the pool's 95 degrees and it is, less than freezing in the winter months. So when I open it in the winter months, you will see a ton of water dripping from that inside cover. When I got the solar cover in addition to that brown cover, it did everything that I needed it to do. The water heated twice as fast, which isn't fast because it only heats at about 2 degrees an hour. I have roughly 1,100 gallons in it, and it heats at 2 degrees an hour, which is double what it was without it. So with the solar panel, it keeps the heat in, and with both covers, I don't smell anything. All the moisture is kept in the pool, and it works great for me. If you were to buy a cover, they run over $600 easily, and I didn't have that kind of money right now. So I hope you learned a lot, and I hope this was helpful. It's been a lifesaver for me. It helps me a lot. All my doctors agree, and I'm very thankful that we have it. It probably took us about 6 months to build. Even though my dad and my husband are both licensed builders,
and very experienced with electrical and plumbing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this on your own, but if you're like me and you got to cut corners and costs and you really need to have something, it's definitely worth it. So I can't tell you to do everything that I did. I'm only sharing what I did. I recommend you do your own research and whatnot. If you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to help, and hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.